On the night Aurora Vale was supposed to secure the biggest acquisition of her career, the restaurant had already begun acting as though the victory belonged to her. Crystal stemware caught the light in tall, elegant flashes. A private dining room overlooking the city hummed with expensive confidence. Men who controlled funds larger than most towns sat at her table in tailored suits, waiting for the final signature that would hand them a fortune and hand Aurora another legend. At 39, Aurora was the kind of CEO magazines described with words like surgical, disciplined, and inevitable. She had spent 15 years turning herself into someone who never blinked first, never negotiated from emotion, and never let anyone confuse softness with strength. Her board trusted her because she was rarely surprised. Her competitors feared her because she was almost never sentimental. Her investors admired her because she finished what she started. That night, all she had to do was sign. Then she heard a little girl gasp. The sound came from the far side of the restaurant, soft enough that no one at her table should have noticed it. Aurora did. She looked up and saw a man sitting near the window with two small girls across from him, twins, maybe 7 years old. One was bright-eyed and restless, already halfway out of her chair with a story she seemed physically unable to keep inside. The other sat straighter and quieter, watching the room as if she preferred to understand things before she trusted them. Their father handled both children with a calm rhythm that did not ask for attention. He cut one girl's chicken while listening to the other's rapid explanation. He reached for a napkin before a spill spread. He switched plates so casually that neither child seemed to notice he had given them the better portions. Then the quieter twin knocked over her water. She froze. Her face changed with the immediate fragile horror children carried when they thought one mistake might ruin everything. The man leaned down, smiled, and said in a voice so steady it seemed to lower the temperature of the room around them, "It's okay. I'm right here. We handle one thing at a time." Aurora stopped breathing. Not because the line was unusual, because 12 years ago, on the worst night of her life, a stranger had said those exact words to her in a hospital corridor while the world was coming apart. The man by the window lifted his head then, and Aurora saw the same eyes, the same stillness, the same face time had only sharpened. At the exact moment the final contract was placed in front of her, Aurora pushed back her chair, rose from the table, and walked away from the deal. If stories about unexpected turns, second chances, and the quiet moments that change everything speak to you, subscribe and stay with this channel. There is always another story waiting on the other side of one small decision. The silence behind Aurora lasted only a second. Then it cracked. "Aurora!" Martin Sloan, the private equity partner leading the acquisition, looked up from the contract with a frown sharpened by disbelief. "We're ready." She kept walking. Every instinct she had spent years cultivating told her to stop. Handle it later. Be rational. Finish the deal. Find the man another way. The old version of Aurora would have done exactly that. She would have taken the face across the room, filed it away, and assigned 3 people to identify him by morning. Efficient, private, controlled. But the old version of Aurora had not spent 12 years replaying one night she could never repair. She crossed the room in the soundless, surreal calm that sometimes came before panic. Around her, silverware paused. A server turned. Someone at another table glanced up, first in idle curiosity and then in recognition. Aurora knew what she looked like. A woman in a slate silk dress and a reputation expensive enough to precede her, stepping out of a private business dinner to approach a stranger with 2 children. She knew the gesture would be interpreted as impulsive, theatrical, reckless. She did not care. Up close, the contrast between their 2 tables became even starker. Her dinner was full of polished voices and controlled appetites. This one had crayons beside the bread plate, a paper placemat covered in lopsided stars, and a pair of children who had no interest in her status because status meant nothing to hunger, comfort, embarrassment, or bedtime. The man looked up fully as she stopped beside the table. He was broader than she remembered, shoulders stronger from a life built around carrying practical weight. His dark sweater was worn soft at the cuff. There was a small scar at the edge of his jaw she could not remember from before. His hand shifted instantly to the back of the quieter twin's chair. Not protective in a dramatic way, just automatic, like breathing. "Yes?" he asked. His voice was calm, wary but calm. Aurora felt absurdly less prepared than she did in front of hostile boards. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said. The more talkative twin tilted her head. "Daddy, is she lost?" The question was so unfiltered that the man's mouth twitched despite himself. "I don't think so, Hazel." Aurora almost laughed, mostly from nerves. "No, not lost." The quieter girl's eyes stayed on her face without blinking. "Then why are you here?" Aurora looked at her. "Because I think I know your dad." The man straightened a little more. "I think you might be mistaken." 12 years earlier, she had been 27 and driving north through freezing rain after a call from St. Luke's Medical Center telling her mother had collapsed. Her father had already been gone for years. There was no sibling to call. No husband waiting. No one between her and the terror of losing the only person who had ever felt like home. She had been halfway across the bridge when her rear tire blew. She still remembered the scream of the rubber, the violent pull of the steering wheel, the way her pulse climbed so fast she thought she might black out on the shoulder before she ever reached the hospital. Her phone had died in her hand. Rain had soaked through her coat in minutes. She had crouched beside the car, sobbing and trying to force air into lungs that had forgotten how. A truck had stopped behind her. A stranger had stepped out, hands visible, voice low, careful not to startle her. He had changed her tire in the storm while she shook so hard she could barely hold the flashlight steady. Then he had driven behind her all the way to the hospital and followed her inside, because it was obvious she was no longer thinking clearly enough to move from one catastrophe to the next on her own. She had sat in a corridor outside intensive care with rainwater dripping off her coat, staring at a vending machine as if it might explain the sentence the doctor had just said. The stranger had crouched in front of her and told her, "It's okay. I'm right here. We handle one thing at a time." She had asked his name later. He was gone before she came back with coffee. Aurora looked at the man in front of her and said quietly, 12 years ago. A storm. My car broke down on the Robert F. Kennedy Bridge. I was trying to get to St. Luke's." No one moved. The energetic twin looked instantly fascinated. The quieter one leaned harder into her father's side. Aurora continued. "You were driving a dark pickup with a broken left taillight. You changed my tire because I couldn't even hold the flashlight steady. Then you followed me to the hospital." Her voice lowered. "My mother died that night." Recognition altered his face slowly but unmistakably. Not all at once. It arrived in pieces, like lights turning on in separate rooms. "You had a burgundy coat," he said after a long pause. Aurora swallowed. "Yes, and a silver ring shaped like a leaf." His eyes dropped briefly to her hand. She no longer wore it. "You kept trying to call someone, but the phone was dead." The restaurant around them blurred. "Yes," Aurora said. The brighter twin turned to her father with both elbows on the table. "Wait! You know Fancy Lady from the worst night of her life." The man closed his eyes for 1 second, then opened them again with resigned patience. "Apparently." Aurora let out a shaky breath she had not meant to release in public. "I searched for you," she said, "for months. I never found you." He looked uncomfortable instantly, as if gratitude itself were an object he would rather not hold. It was a long time ago. It was the kind of night people remember forever. The quieter twin spoke again, soft but clear. "Did you come over because he helped you?" "Yes," Aurora said. Then, because she had already decided truth was the only currency that mattered here, she added, "And because hearing him say that to you felt like getting hit by the past." A woman's heels clicked behind her. Aurora did not need to turn to know it was Camille Hart, her chief operating officer. Camille stopped just outside the family table with the measured stillness of someone trying not to turn a private crisis into a spectacle. "Aurora," she said quietly, "Martin is asking whether he should give you a minute." Aurora could feel the whole room pretending not to watch. The man at the table glanced toward the private dining room and then back at Aurora. No recognition lit his expression at her name. That, more than anything else, told her exactly how different his life was from hers. "I'm Aurora Vale," she said. He hesitated, then nodded once. "Grant Mercer." He tipped his head toward the girls. "And these are Sadie and Willa." Sadie, the lively one, gave Aurora a quick, appraising grin. "I'm older by 4 minutes." Willa did not smile. "That's not a personality." "Sometimes it is," Sadie said. Aurora's tension loosened unexpectedly. "It's nice to meet you." Grant watched her with the same practical caution he had used 12 years ago with a woman in shock on the side of the road. Aurora suddenly understood that this was his default mode with distress. Calm first, assumptions later. She looked back at him. "I know this is strange. I know I'm interrupting your dinner. I just didn't think I could sit down and pretend I hadn't seen you." Grant's eyes rested on her for a beat longer. "No," he said. "I don't think you could." That answer held neither admiration nor accusation, just fact. Camille shifted slightly at Aurora's shoulder. "The board is going to hear about this in under 10 minutes. Aurora did not look at her. "Then they'll hear about it." Sadie's gaze bounced from Aurora to the elegant room she had abandoned. "Did you leave your important dinner to come say thank you?" Aurora answered before Grant could stop the question. "Yes." Sadie looked impressed. Willa looked unconvinced. Grant finally said, "You didn't owe me that." "It isn't debt," Aurora replied. "It's memory." He seemed to weigh that, then looked at Camille as if only just acknowledging the machinery of Aurora's life. "You should probably go back before your people start sending security." Camille inhaled like someone offended on behalf of protocol. Aurora almost smiled. "They know I'm safe." Grant's expression sharpened just enough to suggest he heard more in that sentence than she intended. Safe was a complicated word. It had probably become more complicated after his wife died, though Aurora did not know that yet. "I'd like to thank you properly sometime," she said. "Coffee, lunch, whatever feels reasonable. No pressure." She reached automatically for the card case in her clutch and stopped halfway. No, a business card would turn this into leverage, a transaction, a branded form of gratitude. She put the case away, borrowed Camille's pen without asking, and wrote her personal number on the back of a child's coloring page left blank at the bottom. Willa noticed first. "That was a dinosaur." "I preserved the important half," Aurora said. Sadie giggled. Aurora set the paper near Grant's water glass. "If you ever want to call." Grant looked at the number, then at her, still unreadable. "I'll think about it." That was all. No promise, no refusal, just a sentence honest enough to trust. Aurora nodded. "Fair." She looked at the girls. "It was nice meeting you, Sadie. Willa?" Sadie waved immediately. Willa gave the smallest possible nod, but it was not rejection. It was evaluation postponed. When Aurora turned back toward the private room, the reality of what she had interrupted hit with full force. Martin Sloan was standing now, one palm flat against the table beside the contract. Two attorneys had gone motionless in that polished way people did when they sensed the room had tilted. Camille moved ahead of Aurora and opened the door before anyone else could speak first. Martin's smile had become expensive and hard. "Are we done?" Aurora looked at the contract, then at him. "No." He waited. She remained standing. "I stepped away because I recognized someone important." "That doesn't explain why page 48 still contains indemnity language your team claimed had been removed." The room went still. Martin's face changed, so did the attorney's. Camille's head turned slowly toward Aurora. She had missed it too. Aurora sat down, calm restored in a sharper form. "I was willing to let your team decide how we described the risk. I am no longer willing to let them hide it." Martin gave a short, incredulous laugh. "You're really doing this now?" "Yes." His gaze flicked toward the dining room beyond the door, as if he could still locate the family table responsible for this new tone. Because of a sentimental interruption, Aurora folded her hands. Because being reminded what honesty sounds like made your draft impossible to tolerate. Camille leaned forward. If the indemnity provision stands, we reopen the valuation. One of Martin's attorneys began, "Surely we don't need—" "We do," Aurora said. The next 40 minutes rewrote the deal. Martin tried charm, then pressure, then injured dignity. None of it landed. Aurora had always been dangerous when clear-headed. Tonight she was something rarer, clear-headed and morally impatient. The distinction mattered. By the time the final revised terms were ready, Martin was angry enough to hide it badly and relieved enough to sign anyway. The board would complain later. The press might hear something distorted by morning. None of that changed the only detail Aurora carried home with her. Somewhere in Grant Mercer's pocket was a piece of paper with her number on it. He did not call the next day, or the day after. Aurora spent Thursday in back-to-back meetings while articles framed the renegotiated acquisition as another ruthless win for Vale Dynamics. Camille, who had known Aurora long enough to detect deviation even when no one else could, walked into her office with coffee and shut the door using her shoulder. "You've checked your phone 8 times in 7 minutes," she said. Aurora kept her eyes on a due diligence memo. "That is not a professional observation." "It's not meant to be professional." Camille set down the coffee. "Who is he?" Aurora considered refusing. Instead, she said, "A stranger who was kind to me once." Camille waited. Aurora added, "A man with 2 daughters. And this matters because—" Aurora looked up at the skyline and chose accuracy over deflection. "Because I built my entire adult life around never needing the kind of comfort he gave away without effort. Then I saw him with his children and realized I may have succeeded at the wrong skills." Camille stared at her, then sat down without invitation. "That," she said after a moment, "is not where I expected this story to go." Aurora laughed once under her breath. "Neither did I." Grant called on Sunday afternoon. She was in her kitchen, still in running clothes she had not worn to run, when the unknown number lit her screen. "This is Grant Mercer," he said when she answered. "My daughters have informed me that ignoring handwritten gratitude may be a felony." Aurora smiled before she could stop herself. "They sound well informed." "Only about things they invent." A pause. "Coffee? Public place, daytime. Somewhere no one in your world is likely to call photographers." "Reasonable," Aurora said. "You pick." He named a cafe on the Upper West Side for Tuesday afternoon. Close to a school, she noticed. Close to his life. The choice told her more than small talk would have. He would meet her, but only where he held the map. When Aurora arrived, Grant was already seated outside with black coffee and a posture that suggested he preferred to arrive first in any potentially uncertain situation. In daylight, away from the flattering shadows of the restaurant, he looked more tired than she remembered. Not weak, not diminished, simply responsible in the way people became when life stopped giving them enough margin. "You came," he said. "You called." "That too." She sat across from him. For the first 10 minutes, they stayed near the edge of things. Coffee, weather, traffic. It was Aurora who crossed inward first. "You asked me that night whether I made it in time," she said. "I did. Barely." Grant's expression shifted, gentler now. "I'm glad." She never woke up. Aurora kept her gaze on her cup because it was easier than watching sympathy appear in real time. "But I got to say goodbye." Grant nodded once. He did not offer platitudes. He did not tell her everything happened for a reason. He respected grief too much for that. "I should have found you sooner," she said. "I changed apartments twice in that decade, if that helps." "It does, slightly." That won the smallest hint of humor. Grant turned the paper sleeve around his cup. "Sadie wanted to know if you're famous." Aurora groaned softly. "That's unfortunate." "What do I tell her?" That adults in finance will talk about anyone long enough if enough money is attached. Grant's mouth moved at one corner. I told her you were successful. That was generous. I didn't want her searching your name and finding adjectives she can't pronounce. Aurora looked up, startled into laughter. That may be the kindest thing anyone has done for my public image. The warmth between them lasted just long enough to make honesty possible. Grant set his cup down. I should tell you where my hesitation is coming from. Aurora nodded. Please. I have 2 daughters. Their mother died 3 years ago. He said it cleanly, without performance, but the sentence carried the weight of something repeated often enough to become bone. Since then, my job is stability. Not romance, not drama, not exciting detours. Stability. Aurora listened without moving. I remember you, he continued. I believe you. I don't think you crossed a restaurant to perform gratitude, but you live in a world built around speed and exception. My daughters live in a world built around repetition. School, meals, pickup times, medicine when they're sick, promises that have to survive ordinary Tuesday mornings. His eyes met hers. People from your world think the big gesture is the meaningful part. With children, it almost never is. Aurora let the truth of that settle without defense. That seems like a lesson I should have learned earlier. Grant studied her. Maybe, but it's the one that matters now. She could have assured him she understood. Instead, she chose precision. I understand that you have reasons not to trust me yet. The word yet landed between them before she could soften it. Grant noticed. So did Aurora. She corrected calmly. I understand that nothing about what happened at that restaurant entitles me to more than this coffee. His shoulders loosened a fraction. That's closer. Aurora accepted the rebuke. Closer is useful. The conversation improved after that, not because caution disappeared, but because it was finally named. Grant told her he worked as facilities director at St. Brendan's Academy, an old private school downtown whose heating system liked to fail theatrically in winter. He had a practical mind and a dry sense of humor, sharpened by long exposure to children who assumed adults could fix anything if they cared enough. Aurora told him she lived alone, had no siblings, and had learned far too early how efficiently success could fill a calendar while leaving the rest of life untouched. When they rose to leave, Aurora thought the meeting was over. Then a voice shouted from down the block, "Dad!" Sadie came flying toward them, backpack bouncing. Willa followed more carefully, one hand still linked with a red-haired woman Aurora assumed was Grant's sister. Grant closed his eyes briefly. I told Jenna I'd meet them after. Technically, the sister called as she approached, you said near the cafe. I interpreted creatively. Sadie stopped dead in front of Aurora, delighted. I knew it was a real thing. Willa came to stand beside Grant instead, measuring Aurora in quiet increments. This is my sister Jenna, Grant said. Jenna shook Aurora's hand with the brisk competence of a woman who had spent years helping raise children that were not originally hers to raise. Nice to meet the mystery from the restaurant, Aurora smiled. I imagine your version of me is worse. More dramatic, Jenna said, not worse. Sadie, meanwhile, had moved on to pressing concerns. Your shoes are better today. Aurora glanced down at her loafers. I was warned. That means you listened, Willa said unexpectedly. Aurora met the child's eyes. I'm trying. That answer seemed to register. Sadie looked between her father and Aurora with shameless interest. Can she come for hot chocolate sometime? Grant straightened immediately. Sadie. But the damage, or invitation, was already in the air. Aurora crouched slightly, so she addressed the girls rather than forcing Grant to manage the whole moment alone. That sounds nice, she said carefully, but your dad gets to decide what feels right. Sadie looked dissatisfied by this amount of maturity. Willa watched Aurora another beat, then asked the more difficult question. If he says yes, would you come? Yes, Aurora said. She did not add the wrong kind of promise, just the right-sized truth. Grant looked at her then, really looked, and for the first time since the restaurant, Something in his caution gave way not to trust, but to the possibility of it. That Saturday, he texted, "Hot chocolate, 4 o'clock, no tactical footwear required." Aurora answered, "I will still wear sensible shoes out of respect for the process." Hot chocolate led to another Saturday, then a walk in Riverside Park, then a bookstore where Sadie loudly declared every mystery novel improved if the detective were 10, and Willa quietly browsed astronomy books in a corner until Aurora discovered that the surest way to reach her was not conversation, but parallel attention. Grant did not open the gates all at once. Aurora respected that. At first, every meeting happened in public. Then one rainy Thursday, Jenna got stuck downtown and Grant's shift at the school ran long because a boiler alarm decided to become everyone's emergency. He texted Aurora with obvious reluctance. "If you're already near the neighborhood, could you wait with the girls for 20 minutes? Jenna is delayed." Aurora was there in 12. The apartment was on the 3rd floor of a narrow brownstone divided into rentals. The hall smelled faintly of old heat and someone's tomato sauce downstairs. Inside, the place was small but deeply lived in. Children's coats hung from low hooks. Multiplication tables were taped beside a grocery list on the refrigerator. A repair manual sat open on the counter under a stack of school forms and an electric bill. The twins' shared room was visible through a half-open door. Matching white frames, mismatched blankets, one side crowded with stuffed animals and half-finished projects, the other arranged with fierce order. Grant had apologized for the mess over text before she arrived. Standing in the kitchen while Sadie demanded marshmallows and Willa lined up pencils by color, Aurora understood immediately that there was no mess here worth apologizing for. There was evidence of use, of effort, of a family maintaining orbit. When Grant came home and found Aurora at the small table helping Willa tape a torn constellation chart, while Sadie narrated an argument she had won at recess, he stopped in the doorway and stared for half a second too long. Aurora looked up. "Boiler crisis?" "Boiler melodrama," he corrected. Sadie ran to him. Willa stayed seated but relaxed visibly the moment he entered. Aurora noticed. Grant noticed that she noticed. It was after that evening that their lives began to overlap in ways harder to label. Not dramatic, not intimate all at once, just layered. Aurora started arriving sometimes with library books she thought the girls would like, always paperbacks, never expensive gifts. She learned that Sadie loved being challenged and hated being condescended to, while Willa kept an internal ledger of promises and found charm suspicious if it came too quickly. She learned that Grant never fully sat down in public without first scanning exits, napkins, menus, and the emotional weather of both daughters. She learned that grief had not softened him into sentiment, it had sharpened him into vigilance. And under all of that, she began learning the harder thing, how not to solve with power. Her first reflex when she noticed strain in his life was still efficiency. She wanted to replace the worn winter boots by the door. She wanted to pay for the school field trip flyer tucked under a magnet. She wanted to use a donor connection to secure the girls' places at a summer program so good it would have embarrassed the application pool. Every one of those instincts came from concern. Every one of them would have damaged the fragile trust she was trying to earn. So she did nothing theatrical. She showed up when she said she would. She remembered that Willa did not like loud entrances and that Sadie did. She learned to ask before helping. She kept her phone face down at their table. Grant noticed all of it, though he rarely commented. Then work retaliated. The acquisition she had renegotiated became the first of 2 major expansions. Journalists wanted interviews. Investors wanted dinners. Her board wanted a European partnership finalized before quarter end. Aurora had spent years teaching the world that access to her came at a premium. Now she was the one struggling to protect unscheduled corners of her life from the machinery that had once made her feel important. Camille saw the collision coming before Aurora admitted it. "You're trying to live in 2 ecosystems," she said one evening while reviewing travel schedules. "One runs on urgency, the other runs on trust. Urgency is louder, but trust keeps score longer." Aurora leaned back in her chair. You enjoy being right. Not in your personal life, Camille said. Only in the expensive parts. The expensive part arrived 2 Fridays later. Sadie's class was hosting a science showcase on Saturday morning, and for 2 weeks she had spoken about almost nothing except her project on migratory whales. Willa had helped build the display board. Grant had sent Aurora a picture of both girls on the floor surrounded by blue construction paper and silver glitter, looking equal parts proud and exhausted. Aurora had promised, plainly, directly, that she would be there by 11. Willa had looked at her from across the kitchen table and said, "Then don't make another plan on top of that one." Aurora had answered, "I won't." At 5:10 the next morning, London created a crisis. Regulatory language in the European partnership shifted overnight. What should have been a routine approval call turned into a high-stakes negotiation with penalties large enough to move share prices. By 9:30, 3 board members and both outside counsel were in Aurora's office, insisting she lead the emergency call herself. "You can patch in from the car afterward," one attorney said. "She gave her word," Camille said flatly. The attorney blinked. "To whom?" Camille did not answer. Aurora stood at the window with her phone in her hand and felt 2 versions of herself pulling in opposite directions. One had built an empire by understanding scale. The other had spent the last months discovering that scale did not always determine meaning. At 10:48, she texted Grant, "I'm trying to move a call. Don't tell Sadie yet." His reply came 30 seconds later. "I won't lie to my daughter for scheduling reasons." Aurora closed her eyes. The London call began at 10:57. By 11:16, Sadie was likely standing beside her project, searching the auditorium doors. By 11:22, Aurora was still in the conference room while a director in Europe argued over contingency language, as if no child anywhere had ever waited for an adult to keep a promise. By 11:31, her phone lit up with a message from Grant she did not open until the call ended. "Sadie asked me not to send this. She kept watching the door. Willa says facts are useful." Aurora stared at the words until they blurred. When she finally reached the school, flowers in her hand because panic had made her stupid, the showcase was ending. Parents were folding display boards. Teachers were stacking clipboards. Sadie stood near the hallway with her project under one arm, her face trying very hard to look casual and failing. "You missed the judges," she said. Aurora crouched at once. "I know. I'm sorry." Sadie looked at the flowers and then at Aurora. "Those are for people who already forgave you." The sentence should have sounded rehearsed. It sounded wounded. Aurora set the flowers down on a bench. "You're right." Willa stood a few steps behind Grant. She was not crying. That was worse. Grant's expression was composed in the way adults became when they were determined not to make a child's pain manage theirs, too. "She wants you to see the project," he said. Sadie did. She explained the migration routes in a voice that kept wobbling at the edges. Aurora listened like it mattered because it did. But both of them knew listening at 12:04 was not the same as arriving at 11. Willa said almost nothing. Grant thanked Aurora for coming with a politeness so careful it hurt more than anger would have. He did not invite her for hot chocolate the next week, or the week after. Aurora texted once, then again, never pleading, never pushing. Grant replied with civility and no opening. She deserved no opening. 3 weeks passed. On a Thursday evening, Aurora stood outside his apartment and knocked before she could convince herself not to. Grant opened the door in jeans and a thermal shirt, surprise flashing into guarded stillness. Cartoon voices sounded from inside. "I should have called," Aurora said. "Yes." He did not say it cruelly. That made it worse. "I'm not here to explain London," she said. "I'm here to own what I did." Grant stepped into the hallway and closed the door most of the way behind him. Not shut, not open. A boundary with breath still in it. Aurora looked at the worn carpet between them and forced herself not to reach for persuasive language. This was not a board. Winning would be the wrong goal. "I broke a promise." "Yes." "I hurt Sadie." "Yes." "And Willa expected me to." That stopped him. Aurora raised her eyes. "You were right to be cautious with me." Grant leaned one shoulder against the wall, tired more than angry. "I didn't want to be right." The honesty of that entered her like a blade. "I know how to matter where people measure power," Aurora said quietly. "I know how to manage risk, attention, pressure, scale. I know how to command a room full of men who have every reason to underestimate me." Her voice lowered. "What I am still learning is how to matter in small places where people don't care what I can control. Children live there. Real trust lives there. And I treated your family like I could fit them around the edges of every emergency." Grant did not interrupt. "That was arrogance," she said. "Not because I don't care, because I cared and still assumed care alone was enough." He studied her face for a long moment. "Sadie was angry," he said finally. "Willa wasn't." Aurora nodded once. "Because she had already made room for disappointment." "Yes." His voice roughened almost imperceptibly. "That's what I was trying to protect them from. Not heartbreak in some dramatic sense. Reorientation. Letting someone become part of the pattern and then having to teach them that pattern was a mistake." Aurora let that truth settle fully before she answered. "Then don't erase me fast. Let me repair slowly." Grant looked away toward the apartment door where one of the girls laughed at the television. When he looked back, the caution was still there, but something else stood beside it now. Weariness, hope, fear, all bound together. "I can't promise them certainty I don't control," he said. "I'm not asking you to." "What are you asking?" Aurora took one breath. "The chance to build a new pattern. Not a speech, not a grand gesture, just repetition." He considered that. Then he opened the door wider. Inside, Willa stood near the kitchen and Sadie sprawled on the living room rug with markers. Both girls looked up immediately. Aurora noticed the paper on the refrigerator before anyone said a word. A list in careful block letters. Dates, places, bookstore, park, hot chocolate, apartment. Beside each entry, a small check mark. At the bottom, under Science Showcase, an empty line. Willa followed her gaze. "I hadn't decided what to write yet." Aurora looked at Grant. He handed her a marker from the counter. She approached the refrigerator and beneath Science Showcase wrote, "Late, apologized, came back." She capped the marker and turned around. "That doesn't fix it," Sadie said. "No," Aurora agreed. "It doesn't." Willa asked, "Then what happens next?" Aurora crouched so she was eye level with both girls. "You watch what I do next." Silence held for a beat. Then Sadie, because hurt never stopped her from being herself, muttered, "That is very responsible and kind of annoying." Grant laughed under his breath. The sound changed the room. Repair did not happen in one evening. Aurora did not earn back trust because she had spoken well in a hallway. She earned it over the following weeks by choosing differently when it cost her. She left a board dinner early to help Sadie rehearse a class presentation. She missed a cocktail reception because Willa had a fever and Grant needed soup, medicine, and one adult who could sit quietly while a sick child dozed on the couch. She learned that keeping a promise often looked deeply unimpressive from the outside and deeply significant from the inside. The changes showed up in places no reporter would ever see. Aurora began blocking school concerts and dentist appointments on her calendar with the same seriousness she used for investor calls. She stopped calling small domestic disruptions little things because she had learned that little things were often just big things without witnesses. Once, when a director from London asked why she was unavailable for a late meeting, she answered, "I already have plans," and let him assume whatever he liked. Those plans turned out to be helping Sadie glue costume sequins onto cardboard stars, while Willa corrected everyone's constellation labels with grave authority. Aurora had never felt less glamorous or more correctly placed. Grant changed too, though more slowly. He stopped talking to Aurora like she was a temporary variable. He let her into more of the ordinary weather of the apartment. Lost permission slips, serial arguments, laundry folded while discussing school plays and plumbing invoices. The first time Willa fell asleep against Aurora's shoulder during a movie and remained there when Aurora shifted for a blanket, Grant looked up from the armchair across the room and did not hide what crossed his face. Relief, wonder, and something gentler than either. Spring arrived. The city softened. One Sunday evening, they sat outside a modest diner after dinner, the kind with laminated menus and coffee refills that arrived before anyone asked. Sadie was arguing passionately that curly fries were structurally superior to straight fries. Willa had edged her chair close enough to Aurora's that their sleeves brushed every few minutes without comment. Grant sat across from them with his coffee, looking like a man who still carried vigilance out of habit but no longer wore it like armor. Aurora glanced down the street at the ordinary traffic, the stroller rolling past, the bus exhaling at the curb, the fading light on windows that did not belong to anyone she knew. No crystal chandeliers, no lawyers, no contracts waiting for her signature. Just a sticky tabletop, 2 half-finished milkshakes, and the quiet, nearly miraculous fact of being expected here. She caught Grant watching her. "What?" she asked. He shook his head once, a smile touching his mouth. "I was thinking about that night at the restaurant." Dangerous beginning for a sentence. It was objectively unhinged. Sadie brightened. "I knew it." Grant ignored her. "I thought the surprising part was that you left the deal." Aurora looked at him over the table. "And now?" "Now I think the surprising part is that you kept coming back." The words landed somewhere deep and still inside her. Sadie reached for the last fry. Willa got there first. An argument began immediately, overlapping and ridiculous. Grant sighed with the long-suffering affection of a man permanently outnumbered. Aurora laughed and reached for the ketchup. Willa leaned into her side without thinking about it, a small, unconscious trust more valuable than anything Aurora had ever won in a boardroom. For years, Aurora had built a life that looked extraordinary from a distance and felt airless up close. Now she sat in the middle of something ordinary enough to be overlooked and real enough to change her. If this story stayed with you, subscribe and come back for the next one. Sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is not win, impress, or control, but stay, tell the truth, and keep showing up. That is how trust is rebuilt. That is how love becomes real. And that is how an ordinary table can hold more meaning than the grandest room in the world.